Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate, they write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team.
Welcome to Mastering the Next, a cutting-edge podcast that explores the future of graduate, online, and non-traditional education through the lens of AI and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Lutsky, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451. Join me for discussions with some of the thought leaders shaping the future of graduate enrollment management through technology. Mastering the Next is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that helps institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Today, we're here to talk about one of my favorite topics, the liberal arts and sciences. As colleges and universities are pressured to demonstrate the return on investment for their cost of attendance, many have prioritized science, technology, and engineering fields with higher employability and starting salaries. This has shifted focus away from the liberal arts at a time when AI technology is becoming more central to higher education. Bryce Pendleton, Vice President of Brand and Technology at Southern Virginia University, is here to help us explore the future of liberal arts education in the context of AI technology. Welcome to the podcast, Bryce.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
What's next for the role of the liberal arts and sciences in the future of AI technology from your perspective?
I think what's next is we need to figure out how they can work together. I'm thinking about how students in liberal arts universities and colleges can use AI as a tool to augment and enhance their learning experiences. As you mentioned in that introduction, there's a push to move towards the STEM fields and away from the liberal arts. And I think that's a little bit dangerous to go all in one direction. And I think we need to find a way to marry the two. In fact, as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about, I think it was Bill Gates in February 2011 kind of suggested that we need to invest more, like you said, in outcomes and job placement. And that probably means investing more in the STEM. And about a week later, Steve Jobs said, it's technology married with the liberal arts that yields the results that makes our hearts sing. And I'm a Mac user, and that might, I don't know why, but that might be part of it. It's just how I view the world.
That makes sense to me as somebody who studied rhetoric and communication. I see the value. So I'm curious how you see disciplines like philosophy, ethics, sociology, influencing the development of AI, but beyond the technical aspects, kind of what Steve Jobs was talking about. How do you see those disciplines influencing the development of AI or its use?
It seems like there's a narrative that those in those fields like, philosophy and ethics and sociology, they're going to be kind of setting the guardrails or, laying out policy to conduct how we properly conduct the use of AI. I think that's all fine and good, but I'm actually more interested in the way that philosophy and ethics shapes us as individuals and as human beings. One of the first questions that you wrestle with, in a foundation class in philosophy is what is virtue? What is good? What is the good life? What is beauty? I think it's important that we maintain an emphasis on educating the whole person, so that we can understand when we see something, whether it's, generated through AI or otherwise, if it's good, if it's beautiful, if it's uplifting to the soul. So I think that there's a responsibility for us to learn what makes for a good life, what makes for a good person, and make sure that we're viewing the product of artificial intelligence through that lens.
How do you see the liberal arts and sciences bridging that gap between the folks who are developing AI, who maybe are not coming from that perspective, and broader society, which is where these arts and sciences are broadly applicable?
Hopefully they're inseparable. I think that's something that I've been wrestling with while preparing for this podcast is I think that there doesn't necessarily need to be a bridge. My hope is that they would be developed hand in hand. The questions that I would ask are like, what is this particular use case of artificial intelligence? In what way is that benefiting humanity? One thing that I'm perhaps a little bit concerned about recently, this group in Bangladesh, they did some research on why students use ChatGPT, for example, in college. And you can imagine some of the reasons, but I would say like pretty generally it's easier. There's less work involved, or it's fast. And then a second reason is that if they were to really put their effort into it, the work that ChatGPT does is kind of indistinguishable from what they can do. So why put in the effort? And then the last one is just general apathy towards, doing hard things. What concerns me there is how much human flourishing is governed by our ability to think and work through hard things and make connections. And so one of the dangers that I see with AI, specifically with overuse of ChatGPT, is missing out on those fundamental building blocks or nutrients that are necessary. If you just let everything be automated for you, there's not a lot of activity that you're doing as an individual to better yourself. And so I would just ask, like, what is the use case for AI, and how does that benefit humanity? That's the gap that needs to be bridged.
In the environment we find ourselves in today, which I would argue is quite different from where we were 30 years ago, where when you visited a college, the value of a liberal arts education was unassailable. It was, of course, you need a strong liberal arts education to do anything, even a professional field like management or something like that. You still needed that liberal arts, humanities, social sciences core. We seem to be drifting away from that. And part of it has to do with employability, but what do you see as some of the factors that are making it seem as though these are less important, when clearly the conversation we're having indicates otherwise? These are critical to thinking, to decision-making, to navigating society and implementing technology. What's going on? Why don't folks see that when they're thinking about these decisions about disciplines and investment in an institution?
I don't want to make a general statement condemning all of higher ed. But I do sense a drift in society towards immediate gratification. All of the apps that we're using, all of these technology tools that we have, they're giving us immediate feedback and immediate results. And if you're looking specifically at, job placement immediately after graduation, you're probably going to have a higher earning potential if you are very skilled in one particular set of thinking or tools. So there's an immediate benefit in terms of employability. In 2019, Georgetown University published a study that shows like a 40-year present value of a person in terms of their earning power. Sometimes like $200,000 to $300,000 higher than the average at, among all universities. It's not comparing STEM versus liberal arts, but it's just like liberal arts to all. So there is kind of like a delayed value or return on investment. And I think that's a little bit harder to recognize in the thick of it when you're like, we need funding, we need our students to be employed. I would say a liberal arts trajectory has a little bit of a longer runway, but a higher altitude. And so I think that might be one of the issues that are, driving that shift.
So in that context, it seems as though when I look across the higher ed landscape, it is the domain of the engineering schools or the science schools to administer and think about artificial intelligence in the ecosystem of their college or university. And I'm just wondering, I mean, it makes sense to me, but if you could articulate your thoughts about where liberal arts disciplines will positively shape AI policies or innovations from an institutional level, whether that's in the teaching, whether that's in other places. Clearly, we've talked about ethics, but are there other ways, other examples where the liberal arts are going to have that positive impact on shaping those AI initiatives?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, one of the benefits of a liberal education is just having a deeper understanding and appreciation of humanity in general, differences in culture and differences in thought. And so I guess if we were to have this dichotomy, the liberal artists versus the engineers, we would bring a sense of humanity or human touch to the types of things. I know several universities made investments, an AI research arm within this liberal arts context, and what they can introduce is a greater sense of humanity or human touch or solving human problems, as opposed to just pure experimentation.
That human touch is critical, and the liberal arts can play a key role in that intervention. When I think about the liberal arts colleges in general in the U.S. today, many are in financial trouble, and closures are happening every month, which is a terrible tragedy for some of these schools that have been around for over 100 years and have been doing this great work of educating people in a comprehensive way about humanity. Is artificial intelligence going to be a way that maybe some of these colleges can reinvigorate the value of the liberal arts? I mean, from the perspective you just shared of an institution placing this work within the context of liberal arts, it would seem to me that this is a way for some of these colleges that are seeking relevance, seeking that, we want investment, we want folks to see the value, the return on investment. Do you see this as an opportunity?
Absolutely, I do. At Southern Virginia University, I want to say it was 2017, 2018, we were exploring whether we were going to engage in this Apple one-to-one partnership where every student and every faculty member got an iPad. And one of the representatives from Apple, this isn't a joke, he's like this big Italian guy, and his name is Vin Capone. And he kind of looks like a mob boss, but he's one of the kindest men I've ever met. He made this comment that I just thought was brilliant, that is, technology is morally neutral. And he used that to explain that the previous generation almost always has a fear of the next advancement in technology. So before the printing press, the printing press comes around and the fear is, but how are people going to learn calligraphy and, beautiful handwriting? And then you fast forward to, the typewriter, and it's like, wait, what about the art of typesetting and, all of the stuff? Calculators, how are people going to learn math if they have the answer right in their pocket? So there's always this fear of what that technology is going to do to the next generation, how it's going to hold them back. But I think that we found that when used responsibly, technology advances society. And so I would think that it's very short-sighted of any institution to shy away from artificial intelligence and say that doesn't fit into the liberal arts context. My opinion is that technology, when used responsibly, is a tool to advance human knowledge. So you might ask, let's just say, for example, you're studying Shakespeare. There are ways that you could use a large language model to look for patterns in Shakespeare's language. And so you could marry those two subjects, artificial intelligence with English or literature or Shakespeare and theater history. It's very possible for those things to coexist. And I would just say that as a liberal arts institution, we need to learn how to embrace it and help people use it responsibly. Otherwise, like you said, we become irrelevant. So yes, it's absolutely an opportunity for colleges to stay relevant and demonstrate their relevance.
You're reminding me of a project that a cognitive scientist, Selmer Bringsjord, did, it's got to be over 25 years ago now, where he developed an AI at that time called Brutus 1 that would write short stories. And that there is this value of like literature and AI, and who knows, we may reach a point in the future, and this is kind of Star Trek, where there are celebrated AI authors that people enjoy reading, and it comes from all this human knowledge and human perspective. It's fascinating. So on that note, use your crystal ball for me, and how do you envision the interplay of liberal arts education and AI evolving over the next 10 years or so? Perhaps you could even think about it in the context of Southern Virginia University to start with, and where you see things going at your institution, and maybe think more broadly from there.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's important not to panic and not, blow this out of proportion. AI has in fact been around for few decades at this point. It's becoming more mainstream with ChatGPT, but I think the novelty is kind of shaking up, people's foundation, and they're worried like this is just going to blow up the world. I don't think it's that dire, but I do think that we have to adapt our teaching. Every liberal arts institution, you can no longer assign an assignment that could be done by ChatGPT. Like that's just like that's not teaching somebody how to fish. That's just giving them a fish. So we need to figure out ways that we could, number one, incorporate AI and what AI is good at into our curriculum. And number two, we need to adapt our teaching methodology so that students are using it as a tool and not as a crutch or not as an excuse to learn. So my crystal ball is that it's going to become as pervasive as Google, and everything's going to be okay. That's my crystal ball approach.
Well, we look forward to seeing that future where everything is okay. Bryce Pendleton, Vice President of Brand and Technology at Southern Virginia University. Really appreciate your insights. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
The Mastering the Next podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea, and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Cadieux, J.C. Bonilla, Mallory Wilsey, Brendan Henkel, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.